National Guard troops from Texas have set up at an Army Reserve Center outside of Chicago. They were sent there on the president's orders, the president of the United States, that is. But Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker's office says they've heard nothing about the operation from the White House, the Pentagon, or anyone else. And this morning, a new threat from President Trump that Governor Pritzker and the mayor of Chicago should be jailed for failing to protect ICE officers. Joining us now, MSNBC senior political and national correspondent Jacob Soboroff in Chicago and MSNBC correspondent David Noriega, who is in Portland, Oregon, for us. So, Jacob, what is with this allegation from the president that Pritzker and the mayor of Chicago, Johnson, aren't protecting ICE officers?
It's the same allegation that Tom Homan levied, in essence, about Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass in Los Angeles at the height of the raids out there over the course of the summer. And of course, everybody wants to know what Governor Pritzker has to say about this. I had a minute to catch up with him just a few moments ago right here in Federal Plaza in downtown Chicago. Here's his response to the President of the United States.
This is a convicted felon. I mean, think about that, who's threatening to jail me. I got to say, this guy's unhinged. He's insecure. He's a wannabe dictator. And there's one thing I really want to say to Donald Trump. If you come for my people, you come through me. So come and get me.
You think that he'll chicken out, or would he ever arrest you?
Well, you know the expression, Trump always chickens out, taco. And I got to say, he can't arrest. We've done nothing wrong here. And very importantly, it's Donald Trump that is breaching the Constitution, breaking the law. We're taking him to court, and I believe we're going to win.
So the governor of Illinois, Katie, essentially challenging the president of the United States to come and arrest him here in his state, where the president has sent militarized federal troops, immigration agents to the streets of Chicago, indiscriminately rounding people up, grabbing people off the street. And I'm saying this as a reporter who has seen this with my own eyes, not the worst of the worst on the street. But Governor Pritzker has essentially said that this is racial profiling going on. They're going after people based on the language they speak, the way that they look, the neighborhoods that they are in. And I can tell you that that is what I have seen as well since I have been out here over the course of the last few days as this Operation Midway Blitz, as they're calling it, continues in Chicago.
Jacob, you've had some pretty extraordinary experiences over the past few days. Tell me about what happened yesterday with that daughter who came out looking for her mom.
It was awful, Katie, honestly, and you don't really expect it as a journalist out here covering these kind of things. And the minute I got off the air, talking about one of the operations that happened in Cicero, a neighborhood that's 89% Latino, the most Hispanic neighborhood in all of Illinois, a young woman walked up to me and said to me, "I'm looking for my mother. I'm worried that she has been taken by ICE, but I don't have any confirmation of that." And we had video of what had happened. This is some video of the agents rolling up on the street, but I think we have, Katie, and forgive me if we don't, the video of us showing Samantha, 21-year-old, the video of her mother for the first time. If we do, let's take a look at that.
Señora, ¿cómo se llama? Parecía su familia. Don't touch me. You're not allowed to touch me. Señora, ¿cómo se llama? Dime su nombre.
We can stop if you want.
Dígame su nombre.
Stop.
Look at guys. Look at this fascist right here.
That's her. It's her.
Her mom was going to buy meat to make a stew for their family's evening meal, and walking down a residential block in Berwyn, another western suburb of Chicago, when all of those agents in that video you were showing rolled up on her. I'm estimating here, but maybe a dozen in several vehicles, and they get out and they surround her. And look at this. This is the show of force. Same videographer right there in the background that watched the guys at the bakery I was at earlier in the day yesterday. Also surround one 53-year-old woman, Maricela, whose 54th birthday is on Halloween, October 31st. Her daughter, Samantha, told me she was waiting to buy her perfume until she got paid at the end of this pay period with her jobs in the mall to celebrate her birthday. And instead now she's going over to the Broadview ICE Detention Center, not knowing if she will ever live with her mom in the United States again after 30 years of her mother living in the United States of America after coming here from Mexico and raising a family here.
Yeah, the worst of the worst, as the president has described them. All right, David, tell me a little bit about what you're seeing in Portland, because the president's also threatening the Insurrection Act potentially to use force in Portland after a federal judge there said he cannot use the National Guard.
Right, Katie. So just to set the scene briefly, behind me, behind that yellow police tape that the local police have set up, is the ICE facility that has been the site of a number of protests over the last few months. Now, Trump himself and several members of his administration have characterized what's happening here in Portland as an organized, violent rebellion or insurrection by, organized radical left terrorists. That is very much not what's happening. I think one of the things that sets Portland apart from other cities where we've seen troop deployments, LA, Chicago, et cetera, is that the gap between the way the administration is characterizing things here and the reality on the ground is really egregious. What you have is a tiny, really smattering of protesters who are here around the clock, who are very Portland, by the way, in the sense that they're sort of quirky and ragtag, not particularly committed to a especially clear ideology. And sometimes, of course, there have been demonstrations that have grown to several hundred people. There have, no one can deny there has been some property damage, some confrontation with security forces. But what local officials say is that all of the unrest and the activity that we've seen here is very much under control by the local authorities. Here in Portland also, you don't have the kinds of large, dense, immigrant-heavy, visibly immigrant-heavy neighborhoods and communities that you have in cities like LA and Chicago. So although there has been increased ICE activity in Portland, it's much more sort of dispersed and at a much smaller scale. So that's really what's at stake here with the legal battle that you mentioned, Katie, because the Trump-appointed circuit judge that blocked the troop deployment said that there is nothing on the ground factually to justify a troop deployment here, unlike in LA earlier in the summer, where, sort of deferring to the executive latitude on this matter, there was some colorable reason claim to say that troops were needed on the ground. Now, what I can say, Katie, is that there is a community here I've encountered a substantial community of military veterans who are opposed to this deployment, including one local city councilman that I interviewed yesterday that I want to just play you a little bit of the interview that I did with him. He's an Army veteran. He was a civil affairs sergeant in Afghanistan. I just want to hear a little bit of that. Take a listen.
Portland has a certain set of values, and top of the list is democracy and the ability to exercise your First Amendment right of free expression. And that feels under attack right now by a lot of Portlanders, by a president who is not interested in the facts and is using Portland as sort of a pawn in, I think, a larger project to enrich his own power. I think the objective is to normalize the presence of military troops on the streets of American cities to sort of prepare for a situation where he doesn't want to cede power again like he did in 2020. That's right.
Katie, he's a local elected official, but I've spoken to a number of veterans who feel the same way. And what I can say is that if the troop deployment does in fact happen here, if there are troops on the ground, I think we're going to see a pretty large reaction from the community, which a lot of people, including Councilman Green, who you just heard from, are trying very hard to make sure remains peaceful so that there's nothing that could justify the premise that there is a reason for troops to be on the ground here in Portland, Katie.